वरदां मातरं वन्दे मातरं वन्दे मातरम्।
Bharat Mata Ki Jai. I am CA Astha Gupta. I will be the moderator for the day. In today's webinar, we are addressing a very interesting topic, which is quite relevant in today's time and has become a frequent news item. I'm sure all of you must be reading news about it every day or the other. Today's topic is bogus transactions and the entitlement of input tax credit under the provision of GST law. What are the legal provisions, issues, challenges, remedies, precautions, and the documentation that are required for genuine transactions? I'm sure that all of you must be aware of these fake ITC rackets that are running in the country in the past few years. And in fact, day before yesterday, a Mumbai-based businessman was arrested by the Directorate General of the GST Intelligence Unit. He was basically involved in passing on the credit worth a couple of hundred of crore rupees. Now, let me quickly explain you the modus operandi of a fake racket like this. What happens is that a supplier, he issues a tax invoice without any actual supply of services or goods, and the recipient in turn avails and utilizes the credit against the output tax liability and pays commission to such supplier. With this begins a multi-level chain of transactions of passing on of the credit. And this racket usually involves creation of shell entities, and it is one layer and layer. It is very difficult to catch hold of the originator. So it has become quite a menace for the GST authorities. And to curb this menace, the Directorate General Analytics and Risk Management Team, which is an apex body of the CBIC, it has used a lot of sophisticated data mining and data analysis tools, ranging from machine learning, business intelligence tools, to crack upon these rackets. They've also sought information from NCA, income tax, and banks to catch hold of the originator. And this is how these rackets get busted over the period of time. And after that, what happens is sometimes in this racket, there are certain genuine taxpayers who get caught up unknowingly or knowingly also. They might not be aware that the person from whom they're taking the ITC has malified intention and is involved in fraudulent transactions. Now, along with the perpetrators, these genuine taxpayers, they also have to bear the brunt of the law, which is quite unfair in nature. So what are the legal provisions? What are the legal remedies? Any precautions and documentation that such genuine transactions should be backed with? All of this will be addressed in today's webinar. BVS's GST Group feels immensely honored to have Advocate Charanya Lakshmi Kumaranji as a guest speaker. Charanya ma'am is the tax litigation partner at Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan. She's an advocate on record with the Supreme Court of India. Her field of expertise lies in tax dispute settlement. She has appeared in front of various legal fora, wherein she has dealt with disputes relating to valuation and commodities classification. Right from the inception of GST, she has assisted premier clients in smooth transitioning from pre-GST era to the GST era. She is also an anti-profiteering litigator. She has had an opportunity to work with Mr. K.K. Venugopal, who was the ex-Attorney General of India in 2017. She is one of the top 50 dispute resolution lawyers in Asia as declared by the Asian Legal Business. Welcome aboard, ma'am. Along with Charanya ji, we also have a panel comprising of very premium panelists. First, we have CA Rohit Vaswani ji, who is the advisor to the BVS's GST Group. Rohit Vaswani ji is a prominent member of the Sales Tax Bar Association, special invitee by the Indirect Tax Committee of the ICAI. He has a career spanning over 2 decades, wherein he has dealt with various matters related to service tax, excise, VAT, and now GST. He's also been the ex-president of the BVSS. Our next panelist is CA Advocate Puneet Agrawal ji, who is currently the General Secretary of the BVSS. He is a founding partner of ALA Legal, a firm which deals in indirect tax advisory and litigation. Puneet ji has had the opportunity to represent Fortune 500 companies, PSUs, and various MNCs in matters ranging from indirect taxes, direct taxes, and corporate insolvency. He has won major accolades for representing the Sales Tax Bar Association, which is the largest tax bar association in Asia, in front of the Supreme Court by highlighting the glitches of the GSTN. So much so, the government has also sought his recommendations for curbing these glitches. He's also an avid blogger and an author. Welcome, sir. We also have convener of the GST group, CA Sanjay Gargji. I would also like to welcome him as well. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over this webinar to Charanya ji to begin. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Astha. Thank you for the very warm words of welcome. I have only one correction to make. My former boss, Mr. K.K. Venugopal, is still the Attorney General for India.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That is the only correction. It's a factual correction. That's
Sure,
the only
sure.
But yeah. And it is, I think, an honor that I ever got to work with him for however long I did. Right. So I've prepared a short presentation. I think Astha has given a very interesting and a very apt introduction to today's topic. This is a topic which has, captured everybody's imagination as on date. There are a lot of issues, multiple issues that we are dealing with at different forums. You know, it could be at, say, the investigation stage. It could be at High Court stage. The litigation that is going on. Consultants, the way they are being dragged into this whole stream, that's also something which is very sad. And interestingly, I mean, it is interesting times to say that today there are more criminal law practitioners practicing GST than chartered accountants and tax lawyers, because that is the level of arrests, level of summons and investigation that is going on. So it's very, very interesting that is where we are at today. Right. So what I propose to cover today, I think I have a little over an hour probably. So what I do propose to cover, and please feel free at any time to stop, or if you want me to repeat something, or if you think it's too much, please feel free at any point to stop and ask for questions. Of course, there is a question answer session at the end also, right? So what I do propose to cover today is what really are these bogus transactions. Astha has given a very short introduction, a very apt introduction. What are the bogus transactions and what implications do these have for genuine buyers or genuine customers, right? And how can one safeguard the interest of these genuine buyers? So that is, again, where the discussion eventually will lead to. I'll also touch upon the issue of arrest and bail, because today, especially when we are having a conversation and a dialogue about bogus trading, invoice trading, etc., it is impossible and it's unfair to have that discussion without having a fair discussion about the provisions consisting of the arrest provisions, the prosecution provisions, the manner in which it is being exercised today, when can a person get bail. There has to be a discussion and dialogue over that. And then we will also deal with some of the measures taken by the government so far. So that's broadly what I propose to cover. Right. Now, what really is a bogus transaction, right? Now, there are various identifiers of a bogus transaction, and we are looking at case laws. We are hearing of stories in the news of all of these, fake ITC transactions going on. So let us look at what are the different markers. How can one identify that a transaction is a bogus transaction? What are the markers that the department is looking at today to identify transactions as bogus transactions, right? They find that the place of registration turns out to be a vacant land. Okay. Sometimes the premises are found to be locked. Okay, I'll come back to some of these again, right? Sometimes the supplier is not existent anymore or was never existent. Then they say that the registration of the supplier has been cancelled. Then they say there is a mismatch. It could be a case there is a mismatch in the ITC classification at the supplier end and the recipient end. Volume of supply, many times it's possible, doesn't match with the capacity of the unit, which is, raising these invoices. Then very typical markers are, a particular director or multiple directors who are directors in multiple firms, right? That itself is a very huge indication that something is amiss. Then, multiple firms, 10 firms, 12 firms being registered in the same premises. Sometimes we've seen even up to 50 firms being registered in the same premises, right? So these are all markers, okay? And these are markers, and I'll come back to it, ties up at a later stage when we talk about arrest and bail and liabilities. I'll come back again as to why these are markers, right? Now let's go back to my previous slide. So we said there is a tip-off. So for example, the department gets a tip-off, department has some inclination that a particular transaction is a bogus transaction, and it starts digging and it starts investigating. Now, I want to point out that not all of these allegations of bogus transactions will indicate a fraud case or will indicate a person who is involved in the bogus transaction automatically, right? So let's take an example where the premises were found to be locked. Now, it is possible that it is a bogus case, right? That the premises, that nobody ever worked in that premises, it was locked for the last 10 years. It's very much possible, right? But there can be genuine cases, especially today, in these times and days that we are seeing. Because of COVID, because of this extended lockdown, the premises is locked, okay? The immediate people related to the working of the business are probably unavailable, probably because of COVID, probably they've shifted. There could be so many reasons why the premises is locked. Let us take IBC. Ever since 2016, since the IBC code has come into effect, the cascading effect that it has had on small and medium-sized businesses is enormous. I mean, we are seeing huge businesses shutting down. So what is to say about these smaller businesses which have faced the brunt of IBC? They are probably under liquidation. So there are various reasons why the premises is locked, or there is no activity or no manufacturing or no services being undertaken in that premises, right? So that alone cannot be a marker. Now, one of the pet allegations that they make is that the GST registration of the supplier was cancelled. The invoice has been issued by a supplier whose GST registration has been cancelled. Okay, so far that's fine. But there are genuine cases. That is, just because somebody's registration is cancelled doesn't mean that person is a non-entity. That doesn't mean that is a fake or fictitious firm. It is possible that it was cancelled for various reasons. We have had so many clients come to us for the most frivolous reasons. We have seen the GST registration cancelled. Sometimes it is on the whims and fancy of a particular commissioner who is, your jurisdictional commissioner. They come, they see something, they don't like it. And we also know the number of reasons that are there for cancellation. But that doesn't mean automatically that the firm is a fictitious firm, right? It is possible that even if the registration is cancelled, prior to that date, the invoice could have been raised, supplies could have been made, and therefore the invoice per se can be a genuine invoice. So those are other aspects that have to be taken into account. Now, of course, the bogus cases of these bogus GST registration is called, jumping. So people will take registration, okay, at a particular address, then they will cancel it when they feel that, they're maybe 6 months, 1 year or so, they will operate out of that registration. Then they will jump to another registration. That is another modus operandi that we are seeing. Now, this mismatch in ITC classification of supply and recipient, we have seen in some of the cases, very interesting. Again, it could indicate that something is wrong, that the invoice, the person who is cooking up the invoice, there's actually cooking up of invoice happening and not a genuine invoice. I think there was a case where the supplier's invoice showed something like I think it showed food products as the ITC classification, something related to food products, while the recipient was something totally different. His inward supply was showing a different ITC heading. So that has been noticed in some cases to also be an indicator, but it is possible also sometimes that there could be a genuine mismatch in terms, if there is a manual filling of that particular return and there is a genuine mismatch, that again could be a reason for a genuine person to get this allegation against him. Now, the volume of supply sometimes, so this is a very interesting indicator, and this has been there since the earlier days of excise also, where the volume of supply doesn't match the size and the capacity or the installed capacity of the premises, right? Minute that happens, again, indication is something is wrong. It is not possible that in this small capacity, such a huge volume can be generated. So again, this is not a fictitious firm, but this will still come under your bogus trading and your bogus invoice cases. These are clandestine cases. Another indication which it's just occurring to me, sometimes the amount of inputs availed can far exceed the output supply. So that it could be that the inputs that they are procuring using the cooked up or the fake invoices are done in order to get avail credit and whatever supply. So the inputs will not match. There's excess inputs or inflation of inputs which will not match the smaller amount of supply that's actually coming out. So that's the inverse of this situation. Again, that's an indication that if you have such excess inputs, it only means where are those inputs going. It's definitely an indication that those inputs are being purchased, or the invoices are being purchased to show inputs in order to avail credit. So that's another example. As I said, directors with multiple firms is again, it's a very typical case where you see, and we are seeing in most cases of these invoice trading and these bogus invoices, that we are finding directors who have, they are directors in multiple firms, and invoices are getting cooked up in one firm going to another firm. So even within the same group, they are doing the trading of invoices and the bogus cases. Of course, there are professionals, like in every organized sector. Bogus trading has, I think, also become a very organized crime now. There are professionals who will take fake registrations, who will cook up invoices, and as Astha said, they will sell it to you for a commission. It's very similar to the erstwhile cases of the DEPB script cases that we used to see in customs, DFIA, DEPB scripts, where the scripts used to be completely forged, and then they would sell forged scripts from one person to another. There would be a sale of forged scripts. And then, of course, the question is, where does the buck stop, right? So those kind of issues are there. And I am talking about the forged script case because there could be a similarity. Okay, I don't know if it goes in favor of the genuine buyers or it goes against. We need to have a larger dialogue about this. But yes, there is some sort of a parallelism between the bogus DFIA, DEPB scripts and that trading vis-a-vis our invoice trading that we are seeing now. Right. Now, why is this done, right? So why is it that people engage in bogus transactions? Why is it happening? The first answer that we all have is that you want to take cash refund of unutilized ITC. So that is one of the primary reasons that we are seeing. Of course, tax. So there is tax evasion. Tax evasion being that you avail credit using fake invoices where the tax has never been paid in the past. Okay, you avail that credit and use that credit to pay your output tax liability. So then what happens is your output tax liability, to the extent that it is paid using credit, there has been that much short payment of tax to the exchequer, and that keeps going on the chain, because that delta X is always going to be short paid in the entire credit chain. Okay, so that is the primary reason. Another reason, as I said here, is when people try to claim refund of unutilized input tax credit. It could be, it could be cases where exports are being made, or in cases of inverted duty structure, if there is a hawala that is happening, export and import hawala, which are also cases we've seen in the past. Also, that's a situation where you could have fake ITC credits. Another reason could be when genuinely supplies are, you are taking imports or buying goods, but you're buying it from unorganized sector, right? And the unorganized sector doesn't have a registration. It doesn't have, they don't pay tax, right? So it is possible, but they are cheap. So it is possible that people would do this to purchase the inputs and raw materials from, say, the unorganized sector, or even services. Some of the gig helpers could come in the unorganized sector, gig workers. So it could be that in an unorganized sector, when you're trying to take services or supplies from the unorganized sector, you will get the invoices from a different entity. And if that happens, then, then again, it's the same racket, because tax at the end of the day has not been paid, but you're regularizing an unorganized sector into the credit chain. So that also is incorrect, should not happen. Now let's look at what implications this now has for genuine buyers, right? Now let's take a case study, okay? And there could be, of course, there could be multiple illustrations, there could be multiple, permutation combinations. But for the time being, let's take this kind of a case study. So we start with entity A, right? Entity A is a genuine entity. It's not a fictitious firm, okay? It's a genuine firm which exists. It generates fake invoices, okay? So it does generate fake invoices. Now, this entity A also does regular supplies and raises regular invoices. So it does both these things, right? Now let's take a situation of the the top of the page. So entity A generates a fake invoice. It raises and it sells these invoices, for example, to customer B, who is its customer. Now the customer takes the credit on fake invoices. It's possible that no supply has actually taken place. It's possible, right? So, but customer B takes credit on those invoices. But customer B does provide genuine supplies to its customer C, okay? Customer B discharges its output tax liability, but it does pay that tax using this illegal credit through the fake invoices. So that has happened, right? So there is, say, 80 rupees of credit, and usually they will not pay a penny using cash. Usually such people will try to pay their entire output liability using the fake invoices and the illegal credit. That's the usual modus operandi, right? Now you go to the customer C. So customer C has received its supplies, right? And when the invoice is raised on customer C, he is paying the entire 100 rupees or the entire value of the invoice to B, entity B, which includes the cash component of the tax, which is shown in the invoice raised by B. And customer C also takes credit of that tax component, which it is paying in its books, right? And then it goes on. But see, now in the first case, the regularization has happened when somebody goes to customer C, or customer C is a genuine case, right? He has no idea that this Mr. B here has actually has not paid tax using the cash that was given to him, but has paid his entire output tax using credit, right? Customer C is not going to find that out. Now, let's take another situation. Let's take a situation where our entity A is there, giving genuine supply now, right? Like customer B, but it's giving an absolute genuine supply. So no fake invoices. It's a pure, genuine, honest transaction. It provides certain goods as inputs, raises genuine invoices, gives it to customer D. Okay. Customer B receives the supply, pays the tax component of the whatever is raised, and takes credit of the same. And customer D is an input supplier for customer E. So our entity E also does the same thing, right? So when you look at ADE, that is a completely genuine transaction. But when you look at ABC, the transaction is tainted. Okay. But what happens today is when entity A or entity B is investigated, or it is discovered that A and B are involved in this racket, C, D, and E are getting involved today. Investigations, they are all, it is basically you're getting caught in the crossfire, right? But you will also come under that umbrella of suspicion, and that is happening. And today, more number of genuine customers are getting harassed because of the actions and transactions of illegal transactions done by people like A and B. But that is where we are today, right? Now let's again look at what this means for a genuine taxpayer. Now, as I said, because of no fault of their own, entities such as C, D, and E are going to start facing issues. Now, what kind of issues are they going to start facing? First is that at the ends of C, D, and E, the first thing that they're going to sort of catch is the ITC credit, right? So the ITC is going to be denied as soon as an investigation starts. The first thing in the mind of the officer, the first thing that happens during the summons, during investigation, is to say that this quantum of ITC that you have claimed based on supplies made by A or B is going to be denied to you. Okay, and that happens in many ways. In some cases, we have seen that, they block the ITC in the credit ledger in the common portal. Sometimes they are made to reverse the ITC credit. In some cases, they are made to deposit the amount using the DRC 03 challans during investigations. These things have happened. And when we talk about investigation, Section 67, the proceedings get launched. There is going to be search. Sometimes there might be seizure of goods. Sometimes there could be very grueling sessions of interrogation. The goods, as I said, they could be, prohibited from being removed. There could be a prohibition order on your warehouse. Lots of things can happen, right? So this is where, the first step of C, D, and E getting caught in the midst of all of this begins. Then what? Is that it? Are they only simply going to face investigation and then, they will get a show cause notice in their hand in, say, 3 months' time? So investigation starts today. 3 months later, they get a show cause, and then they file a reply to the show cause. And, the way the GST Act expects things to happen in the flow, that's the expectation. And we have these memes, no, expectation versus reality. So that's the expectation. But what is the reality? The reality is not nice. The reality is not this at all. In reality, investigations go on for months. Okay, they are never ending. Investigation against C, D, and E, our genuine players in this drama, will start out as, probably just to see if they had any role to play in the fake invoice and the invoice trading. So there will be summons issued to the director, summons issued to various employees, their consultants, all those things will start happening. Their vendors, other vendors, and as long as they only go to vendors, sometimes they might end up going to their customers. So then the whole thing starts unfolding, right? The whole drama of the investigation, as we like to call it. But things don't end there.
Ranya, can I take a minute here?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Yes. C, D, E is all right. I am asking a question regarding B. You are saying the outward transaction is genuine. There is a genuine supply, genuine output tax. Can you tell me how can a genuine output supply of goods, I am talking about goods, can happen in case of the fake purchases? If there is no purchase, how can I sell the goods genuinely?
Okay. So, sir, when it comes to goods, so first of all, it is much easier if it's a situation dealing with services because, you don't have to account. Sometimes when we are seeing people like B, they are the ones, as I said, who might actually be purchasing goods from the unorganized sector, but purchasing cooked up invoices. So what will happen is the tax paid on the cooked up invoice coming from entity A. So they are probably purchasing genuine material from someone else, say X, but who is not registered under GST, right? So the goods have to come. You cannot have a genuine supply of goods unless there is actual production happening or at least trading happening. It is possible that he is purchasing and manufacturing or trading actual real goods, but he is not getting an invoice at all. Those are coming completely without invoices. And he is getting invoices, cooked up invoices. So that is a possibility how for goods trading and goods supplies, customer B or entity B will be involved. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, that is okay. That is the real situation and practically what sometimes happen. But in this case, can the supplier, customer B, can say that when I am discharging my output tax liability and there is a genuine output supply, how can you say that there is fake invoices? Because there is a lot of litigation on this fake invoices also. All the documents are complete. Only on the statement recorded by someone based on that statement, or even without having the statement, some of the firms where they were not found on the address, etc., they just say that these are the fake invoices. So I am saying, how can the customer be fight that these are not fake invoices when I have a genuine supply? How can the invoice of purchase be fake? That's what I want to say. That's it.
Yeah, no, so that is, and you're absolutely right in pointing that out. Unfortunately, that is the conundrum today, right? That is what is happening, and that is what the industry is facing, right? At the same time, because, yes, so customers C, D, and E, what rights do they have? How are they ever going to find out? Because they have actually received the goods, right? So how are they ever going to find out? I am going to touch upon this. I have, we can probably have, that might actually lead to an interesting dialogue in the end to see, what kind of due diligence can be done by C, D, and E. Unfortunately, what happens is already the GST law is compliance heavy, right? Now, if you're going to keep shifting the burden more and more to people like C, D, and E, what it indicates is a breakdown of trust, right, sir? When initially, from a self-removal scheme in the 70s, it was shifted to a self-assessment scheme. The white paper there and the parliamentary reports actually indicated a shift in the mind of the excise officers, and it was a shift that was cultivated. The shift that was cultivated was to bring in trust, right? Today, what is happening is we are seeing absolute breakdown of that trust. Okay, it is not a good signal for the days to come, because it is going to become more and more difficult. It is not fair that a genuine, honest taxpayer citizen has to go and declare himself to be genuine every single time. But that is what is being asked of him today, unfortunately.
Please carry on.
Yeah. Yes. So now let's go back to our C, D, and E. Now, of course, A and B are also going to face the music. Today, I'm going to restrict our discussion more towards our genuine players, because I think whatever course law has to take against A and B is on one side, but how do we as tax practitioners protect these genuine taxpayers? That's really where we are coming from. Now, just because you're a genuine taxpayer doesn't automatically mean that once the investigation starts, things are going to be hunky-dory. No. Even for genuine players, as I said, the onus to prove that they are genuine players is very, very high. And the bar is very high. And you have to keep proving that you're actually a genuine player in this thing. The threat of arrest is something that even genuine customers C, D, and E are facing. The threat is very real. When the investigation goes, and we've assisted so many assessees during this investigation in the past few years, the fear is there. It's very sad to see that somebody with a proper white collar job, has probably got an MBA from one of the best schools in the country, honest employee or honest director, suddenly have that fear of getting arrested for something that he is absolutely not responsible for. So that fear is there, and it's very much there, and it's a little sad, right? But having said that, the threat of arrest is very real. Okay, I will deal again with arrest in great detail, and also we'll analyze what kind of decisions and where the discussion is going with respect to arrest also. Then, of course, under Section 69, as I said, there is a threat of arrest. There is issuance of summons, as I said, for interrogation, for recording of statement. Here it is again very important to understand the rights and liabilities and the rights actually that a taxpayer has. Then under Section 83, they have the power to provisionally attach any property or your bank account, etc. Then, of course, penalties can get levied under 122. Registration can get cancelled under 29. Show cause, of course, should get issued under 73 or 74. Largely under 74 is what we are seeing. If at all, the show causes are getting issued, because from what we have seen, the investigations in some of our cases have spanned, I think there are investigations that we are dealing with where show causes have not been issued when the investigation started as way back as in mid 2019, in July, August 2019 or October 19, and we still have no idea when the SCN is going to get issued, right? So that is again, that's not fair, that's not correct, because the allegation also, they don't know what is being made out against people, and they've been made to deposit tax during the investigation to buy peace, Confiscation of goods can happen under 130, and of course 132, our prosecution sections, etc. are there. They also can get triggered. Now, what should a genuine taxpayer be doing, right? We'll come to what preventive action he can take, but what should he be doing? Now, the first and foremost thing, okay, once an investigation starts, is to cooperate. It is your duty as a genuine taxpayer to cooperate with the authorities during the investigation. There is no two way about it. You must cooperate, right? Now, there will be summons that will be issued. You must attend the summons. Now, there are some interesting orders that have come from different high courts. In some cases, we have argued, and successfully in some cases, to say that we must give our statements through video recording. Then during summons, there are Supreme Court judgments now to say that during summons, you can have the presence of a lawyer within visible range. He cannot be in the same room as where the interrogation and the questioning is going on, or where the statement is being recorded. but he can be at a visible distance from where your client is sitting. So that will give some sort of a relief to the client in those situations. There are a couple of interesting judgments under criminal law, one of Parambir Singh Saini and a couple of other judgments. I think Muhammad Irfan is another judgment, where they do say that, of course, those, as I said, that is more in terms of custodial violence, where they say that interrogation should take place near a CCTV or under a CCTV camera, and they must preserve the footage. So police stations, etc., you must have CCTV footage. This is now being borrowed in some cases, even in customs cases, as well as in some GST cases. We are trying to borrow it and a little bit succeeding, I can say. Of course, why is this necessary, right? Let's be honest. It is not a breeze to go to the office of AGST, be it superintendent or commissioner or deputy commissioner. It is not easy to just walk in, explain what business you're doing, explain the transaction, especially if the transaction involves that of fake ITC credit. I know how harsh these officers can be for a genuine interpretation issues. We've had cases where pure interpretation on classification or valuation or any just understanding an exemption notification, and they have been so harsh with assessees. Make My Trip is a case of a pure interpretation, right? Still, they were so harsh and they went and arrested Mr. Pallai. So you can imagine if it's situations where there is a genuine doubt as to interpretation of a particular section or particular statutory provision, and they can be so harsh with them. Imagine how harsh they are going to be when it's a fake ITC racket, right? They are going to think they're busting like a drug racket or something. That's the way they behave, right? They probably have to. I mean, if that's probably how they're going to catch hold of A and B in the first place, right? So that's going to happen. Now, so therefore, these things will happen. They will be harsh. There are some more ways when you can protect your interests and be more aware and educated of the rights of a taxpayer, right? It's important to know these things. If your goods have been seized, you can seek, provisional release of goods using bank guarantees. If there has been an arrest, you can move a bail application, or you can try and, if there's a threat of arrest, file an anticipatory bail application. Of course, if there are coercive steps that are taking place, if there are genuine prima facie, you can show evidence of not at all being linked to the ITC trading, racket. You can try and move the High Court, for certain interim reliefs that can be done. Of course, once a show cause is issued, you always have the statutory reliefs available of filing, a reply and, filing an appeal, etc. Unfortunately, here, I have to mention this, and of course, this is also a very big burning topic, is the issue of pre-deposit. So imagine there is a completely false case made out against you with, hundreds of crores or say tens of crores of ITC credit being alleged that it is fake ITC credit. So assuming a show cause has been issued to C, D, and E, A, B, C, D, E, all five, right? Now, the question really is, where does the buck stop? Okay. Who is supposed to pay the exchequer that quantum of, say, 10 crores or 20 crores of ITC that has been evaded? Okay, where does the buck stop? Is it going to stop at A or B? Or is it going to continue to C, D, and E? Okay. Is there a double recovery that is going to happen? If B is also going to be made to pay the credit portion, and C is also going to be made to reverse the credit, then that's a double whammy, right? So that cannot be there. So you must stop the liability at some point. Unfortunately, the way our section 16 is worded, this is where section 60, of course, there is a constitutional validity of section 16 also in some courts that have started. But that's really where you are seeing this connection, right? So how can you have A, B, and C be made liable to pay the same quantum of ITC credit, which if any one person reverses, the loophole is plugged, or the leakage is plugged. So that's another dialogue we must really be having. So Sanjay ji, maybe we can pick this up in the end and have a discussion about that, because it's a very relevant thing, especially for ITC cases.
Yes, please. Yes.
Now, how can you advise clients and genuine taxpayers to be wary of these kind of activities? How can they do their due diligence, right? So one thing is a vendor verification and a vendor due diligence that can happen. Okay, maybe they can check what kind of pending litigations are there. Maybe they can check for certain tax compliance, etc. They can do some financial health checks. Of course, it's an overkill. Unfortunately, it's an overkill today, because as I said earlier, that's really not how one does business, right? You have a in a completely market driven, or free market driven economy, you just find players who are going to give you the most competitive rates and start doing business with them. But if you're going to start adding these conditions, then ease of doing business is definitely going down, right? But there are some things, besides a heavy duty due diligence, maybe a light due diligence is something that you can keep doing. You can do a random check on and off on your vendors. But another very important thing is documentation. Okay, what kind of documentation should you have? Should you have with you to ensure that later on, when you are called in for the summon, you being C, D, and E, when you're called in to that office for summoning, what kind of documentation are you going to have to back up that, hey, I received genuine supplies, inward supplies, and I made genuine outward supplies, right? What kind of documentation? First and foremost, please have valid contracts with vendors and customers. Okay, we are seeing people with POs and all, that's fine, right? But please have those things. Have a valid, I know it increases documentation, but this kind of documentation is important. Okay, and I'm not coming from only a tax angle, etc. We struggle when it comes to recovery of dues, when it comes to arbitrations or alternate methods of doing disputes resolution. We struggle because in many cases you don't have valid contracts, right? You have very sketchy contracts. It's all, word of mouth. So and so, I met so and so, he's going to give me so much, and there's a large, you're giving credit, you're paying on. Am I audible?
There's slight disturbance.
Okay. 1 second. Is it better now?
Yeah.
Yes,
it's good.
Yes, yes, yes.
I think I spoke too fast. This is the way Zoom's way of telling me to slow down. So yes, so so documentation, right? So please have contracts. Please spend time. If you're big enough to be doing business, big enough to be registered under GST, it's important that you put these systems in place. If you're a small company, it's easier to put these systems in place when you're smaller rather than bigger. So have a proper legal team which is going to do your contract drafting, do your back ending with the vendors and front ending with the customers. It is very, very crucial. Okay. And why I'm saying this, of course, is, as I said, to safeguard interest here. But you are losing opportunities of recoveries under IBC, recovery under alternate, ADRs such as arbitration, settlements, because you don't have anything written, anything concrete on paper. Okay. Make sure you have invoices and other documentation for the supply. Make sure you have everything, and everything has to be on point. You must be filing. So genuine taxpayer has to be filing returns regularly. Okay, as much as possible, make sure your vendor is also filing returns regularly. If at that point your 1 and 2A mismatch starts happening, or he's taking far too long, then please do a due diligence immediately, do a check, and if required, stop taking material from that vendor, find some other vendor, right? You have to be proactive in these things. Okay. When it comes to goods, supply of goods, inward supplies of inputs and raw materials, it is easy to prove these things because you can have gate passes, you'll have e-way bills, etc. to prove. But please keep those things. Please preserve documentation of receipt of goods. Receipt of services becomes a little abstract, right? So for example, if you're taking help of gig workers or manpower supply, okay, what kind of documentation are you going to keep? If you're taking IT services, what kind of documentation are you going to keep? So like that, business auxiliary, of course, now the point what I'm trying to say is for each type of service. So for example, let's take manpower supply, okay, have a register, okay, have all of them enter, have some sort of a back-end contract with the manpower supplying agency, okay, regularize it, regularly check that it's being done properly. Sometimes we have found that 1 or 2 people in a large company, it is possible that 1 or 2 people within your organization or within the organization of the client is also hand in glove, unfortunately unknown to the management. That does happen. Unfortunately, that one person is going to put the entire management at risk, right? So those kind of checks. So have the manpower. So for example, workers should come, they should make their entry. Is there an entry register? Is that getting audited? Like all of those things, these are good practices, right? So have these good practices built into your system and have procedures and have systems in place. Now, very quickly, I think I'll take another 15 minutes. Is that okay? Astha, Sanjay ji? 15-20 minutes. I want to cover arrest and bail actually.
You're good to go.
Okay, fine. So now I want to as I said, I want to cover arrest and bail because as I said earlier, this is really where our GST jurisprudence, so to say, I think Puneet sir will also agree with me at this point that unfortunately we are seeing, I think, maximum jurisprudence under advance ruling and under arrest and bail. Right, Puneet sir? Right. We were seeing e-way bill earlier. Now at least it has evolved to this.
Is it jurisprudence or is it bailisprudence?
That we don't know. That I am not going to say, that you are saying. Right. It should be bailisprudent actually. So, right. So again, so let's come quickly to the arrest provisions. Who can authorize the arrest? A commissioner can authorize arrest, and what are the grounds? So reason to believe. Again, we'll come back to this later. So when can a commissioner authorize an arrest? On having reason to believe that such person has committed any of these specified offenses. Okay. Now, the list of offenses is effects supply without issuing invoice with intent to evade tax, right? We all know these offenses. I'm going to quickly run through them. Okay. Issues invoice without actual supply, okay, resulting in availment of ITC or refund. Okay, then availing ITC using invoices without actual supply. Then fraudulently without any ITC, without any invoice or bill, he's availing ITC. Okay, collects tax but does not pay the same to the government. Okay. Now, the thing is here, the trigger point for Section 69 arrest is the quantum. So if they believe that the amount evaded is anything over 2 crores, that's when the trigger starts, right? We are also seeing that in many cases, there is a tip-off given to PMLA authorities, okay, to ED authorities, or vice versa. ED authorities are giving tip-offs to GST authorities. So in many cases, we are seeing ED investigation and GST investigation going on parallelly. So that is also something which is happening. Earlier, it used to happen with income tax and ED. Now it is GST and ED. So that is something that we are seeing. I thought I'll just put it to everyone's knowledge. Now, who can get arrested, right? If you are supplier, so in our earlier example, A and B, A is a supplier, so is also B, our orange fellows. So their directors, their employees are under the scanner, they can get arrested, and in many cases, they are getting arrested. Okay. Recipients, okay. Recipient B, our orange B, there's very high possibility of him, of that director or employee getting arrested, very high possibility. But even when it comes to C, D, and E, the chances of arrest of such recipients, directors and employees of such recipients, is not nil, is not zero. They have a small chance of getting arrested. Okay. While here, we can say, we'll tell our clients, don't worry, you are not going to get arrested. Aapne to kuch bhi nahi kiya hai. You are not involved in the bogus. You're not involved in the fake ITC. You never knew. You took your precaution, right? But it's that director or that employee who's going to go to the GST office. Okay. He doesn't know when he's coming out. So all of this can be great legal advice and giving confidence, but it is sad, right? It's easy for us to say, but he's the one who has to face the music. Now, consultants, Astha also mentioned this right in the beginning, that there have been cases where consultants have also got arrested. Now, the kind of consultants who are getting arrested are those, who actually are playing an active role in facilitating this. Some of them have also reaped benefits out of the bogus transactions. Of course, Puneet sir and I, we can go on for hours to understand reaping benefit of the transaction. Does it mean anything related to the transaction or that ITC portion? There can be, we can keep arguing that, and there's a huge scope of interpretation over there. Now, one interesting, consequence or unfortunate consequence when a consultant gets arrested or consultant gets, under the scanner, comes under the scanner, is his other genuine clients can be investigated. So say a consultant for our, firm A, entity A, is also a consultant for, whatever, XYZ, who are absolutely genuine people. This consultant has not done anything, everything is above board. Everything is legal when it comes to the other clients of his, but merely because he has helped or facilitated this transaction, a bogus transaction, helped set it up for our firm A, all his other clients XYZ are also unfortunately going to come in the scanner. There will be a health check, that will be done even for them. So that is really something that, one needs to be wary of. One needs to be very careful. Now, this is just a snapshot. I've already explained parts of this. Now, under section 132, these are some of the offenses, and you can get arrested for, serial number 1 and 2, actually, because, and in 1 and 2, and of course, serial number 1, where the amount of tax is more than 5 crores. So the offenses are under 132 ABCD. Those are the offenses, right? 132(1) ABCD, right? Then there is a further classification done of these offenses. Okay. That classification is done on a monetary basis. So up to 2 crores, okay, it's a non-cognizable offense and it's a bailable offense. Okay. Above 2 crores, okay, but you cannot get arrested. Under 2 crores, you cannot get arrested. Prosecution will get launched. At the end of the prosecution, there will be some sentencing, etc. But not possible to get arrested under section 69. Now, when the evasion is between 2 to 5 crore bracket, it's a non-cognizable offense, right? But it's a bailable offense. But when we say it's a non-cognizable offense, it means that the commissioner, he will have to get a warrant before arresting the person. But it is bailable, which means you just go to the commissioner, pay the bail amount, and you can come out. but that is only between 2 and 5 crores. Okay. Anything more than 5 crores, it is cognizable, which means if the commissioner, okay, has reason to believe that you have committed this offense and the possible tax evasion or ITC benefit or refund, blah, 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 is more than 5 crores, then you can get arrested. It is not bailable, which means you will have to go and apply for a bail before the magistrate, and you have to go to court and do those things, right? So that's really how the offenses are classified. Now, there is jurisprudence already, a lot of it actually over the last 3 years that has been generated regarding arrest. These are some of the notable cases. Akhil Krishna Maggu case in Bombay High Court, Punjab Haryana High Court, sorry. A very recent case of Krishna Murari Singh in Bombay High Court. This is still pending, actually. Notice has been issued on constitutional virus of, section 69, 132, etc. also. There is Nitin Verma versus State of UP. There is Arnab Goswami case last year. Justice Chandrachud's judgment is there. Now, what can really be culled out as a ratio with regarding to arrest? Okay. The power to arrest has to be exercised only in exceptional cases. That is the rule of the thumb or rule of law. Okay. It cannot be exercised in a routine or casual manner. It cannot be done in order to create an atmosphere of fear or to terrorize the businessmen. Okay. CAs and advocates, as much as possible, their arrest should be avoided. Okay, unless and until you show that they are part of the fraud or they're beneficiaries of the fraud. Right? Till that point, you must avoid arresting chartered accountants and advocates of this. Now, if an assessee does not have any prior criminal antecedents and he cooperates with the inquiry, again, there is enough jurisprudence to say that such people should not be arrested. Okay? And of course, the conduct of the accused is very, very relevant. But what we are trying to say here is, or what the general trend with respect to granting bail or saying you should not have arrested in such a case, etc., is that, first of all, what was the reason for you to arrive at the belief that you need to arrest a person? One is to reason to believe that evasion has taken place. That is fine. When you want to arrest, there is something more that you're trying to do. You're saying that when this person, this mastermind, kingpin, whoever, part of this ring, if he is outside and not behind bars or not in custody, he is going to derail my investigation. Right? That is the underlying current of when arrest should take place. So, is the investigation going to get derailed because this person is outside? Or if he is outside, he cooperates with the inquiry, he doesn't have any past antecedent, criminal antecedent, he's going to cooperate, then why is and he's not going to tamper with evidence, he's not going to manipulate evidence, he's not going to threaten other witnesses, in which case, you should not arrest him, or rather, if he gets arrested, you should grant him bail. So these are some of these things. Now, as I said, one of the prerequisites is reason to believe. But what courts have said is, you do not need an assessment of tax liability, or you don't need issuance of show cause notice to arrest. Okay. So, and these are the judgments which say that. In the case of P.V. Ramana Reddy, for example, they said that adjudication or completion of assessment is not necessary to arrest a person. Okay. Then similarly in Vimal Yashwant Giri also, they say that you don't need to have completion of the adjudicating process. Similarly in Sanjay Dhingra also, they say that arrest cannot be effected or prosecution cannot be launched. It's incorrect to say that it can't be done without a show cause. So that it means that you don't need to wait for a show cause to be issued before arresting a person, especially when the power has been given under Section 69 to arrest. Okay. Now, again, similarly in Bharat Raj Punj, similarly in Mahendra Kumar Singhi, this is what is the underlying, response in these cases of courts. Okay. Now, this brings us to a very interesting point in our discussion. In all of these cases, the judgment of Make My Trip India was cited, okay, on behalf of the petitioners. They all cited this judgment and a couple of other judgments, all of them citing to say that show cause is a prerequisite before making an arrest, right? But in all of these cases, the courts sidestepped Make My Trip and still upheld the arrest that took place. Okay. So, as I said, it brings us to an interesting discussion point. Is the judgment still relevant? Is it distinguished? Is it overruled? Okay. Or does it not have any application under GST? These are the common questions we keep asking. We are grappling with this every time we have to argue a case. Now, in my view, the judgment is still very relevant. Okay. Judgment has not been overruled. The Delhi High Court judgment has been upheld by the Supreme Court. So the judgment is still good law. Okay. But what people fail to notice whenever they question this, or whenever they say it's not relevant or it doesn't apply to GST, is in each of these cases, the facts of the case were very, very bad. The facts indicated fraud. The facts indicated bogus trading. The fact indicated fictitious firms being created, which was not at all the case in the case of Make My Trip. That was a case, as I said earlier, for pure interpretation. So that is really where the courts are writing about the case, they're noticing the judgment, but they said no. But in this case, the facts are very different. And that's really why the MMT case is not being applied in this case. Having said that, I will show you in numerous cases where bail has been granted, the courts are relying on the very same judgment to grant bail also. Okay. Now, I'll quickly summarize what reason to believe really, what it really entails. Okay. What is the scope of the term reason to believe? Okay. So it says that it should be formed by, applying the mind to the material and information which is in the possession of the authorized person, which is the officer in this case. Okay. That reason to believe must be that of an honest and a reasonable man. Okay. It can't be of an unreasonable, overly suspicious person. That reason must be held in good faith. There should not be any mala fide in arriving at that reason to believe. Okay. It cannot be on mere suspicion, rumor, tip off. That's not enough. They must record the reason to believe. Okay. The record need not be supplied to the petitioner. Okay. There is no mandate, but it should be there in some official document. Internal document should be there. Right? So again, in all of these judgments, they have gone into the depth of what is reason to believe. And they've also said that reason to believe is different from reason to suspect or to have an opinion. There must be a justification for having a reason to believe that a person needs to be arrested. So that is really where I'm going with this. Now, there have been some cases, even with respect to Section 69, when judicial scrutiny, okay, of the reason for arrest. So when somebody is getting arrested and you move the High Court, what do you really tell the High Court? You say that you're going to ask the High Court to sit on judgment of another person's discretion, effectively. So the High Court usually in such cases, especially in a writ jurisdiction under 226, the scope of inquiry is rather limited. Okay, and really only for these two reasons, sufficiency of material or no reason recorded, are the courts entering into a discussion of whether there was sufficient reason to believe that a particular person was required to be arrested. Okay. Sufficiency of material is an objective criteria which the court can look at. They can say that was there enough material on record for you to come to the conclusion that this person needs to be arrested. So that is called sufficiency of material. The other thing is actually no reason being recorded. Courts have summoned internal documents and note sheets to see if the requirement of section 69(1) was fulfilled and whether internally the reason to believe has actually been captured or not. They will not see whether what really was the reason. That they will come to when we talk about sufficiency of material. But they do see in several cases, they do summon the documentation in completely, preposterous cases where you really cannot, any rational person cannot think that that particular kind of person should be arrested. They can do that. And then finally, bail. Okay. When can they deny bail? So I'm just going to give very, very basic and then hand it over to Sanjay Ji, Astha and the panelists. Okay. When can bail be denied? Okay. When a person fails to attend summons, that is the primary reason when bail is denied. Okay. The person was issued, say, 4 or 5 summons, never attended a summon, and therefore arrested. Then he goes to court and asks for bail. Very unlikely that he's going to be granted bail. Okay. Non-cooperation during investigation, similarly. Inconsistent statements, right? So on different dates, he goes and he gives inconsistent statement. That means that somebody is lying. It's very difficult to maintain the illusion of a lie. So inconsistent statements has always been an indication to deny bail, because they believe it's some sort of an admission of guilt, or a conclusion of guilt can come. Prima facie, you can conclude that there is some guilt. When there is danger or threat that he could be alerting others in the ring, if he's a flight risk, he's going to escape, run away, leave the country, etc. If there is chance that if he is let out, he can tamper with the evidence. Okay. He can alienate property. That is very, very a very big reason many times that bail is denied, because it is possible that he comes out, alienates all his movable properties or some immovable property before the investigation, before the show cause is issued, etc. And thereafter, even if a demand is crystallized against that person, nothing really, no monetary benefit or nothing really can be extracted from him. Okay. Gravity of the allegations, as I said, those 4-5 cases of your P.V. Ramana Reddy, Mahendra Kumar Singhi, Bharat Punj, all of these cases, okay, these are cases where the gravity of the allegation is so grave that the courts refuse to grant bail. If there was a prior conviction, or there is, for conducting the investigation itself, you need custody of this person, right? Now, when is it granted? As I said, now it can be granted when there is no sufficient material to justify arrest. If that person has already spent time in custody, okay, there is no criminal antecedents, or default bail. If the charge sheet has not been filed in 60 days, then he should be granted default bail. On this aspect, by the way, there is a larger discussion happening in the Supreme Court in the case of Sapna Jain, where they're talking about ED, customs, and other, economic offenses, and whether this, automatic bail should be available in such cases. But yes, it's definitely something that one can try to get bail for. Then if the investigation is already concluded, then there is no reason for the person to still be behind bars or in custody. If during custody no interrogation took place, then you really don't need that person in custody. Okay. If the amount in dispute is deposited, there is no show cause notice issued even after years, or where the quantum of tax evasion has not been ascertained, these are all good grounds to seek bail. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go further on this topic because this is a very long winding issue otherwise, but suffice it to say that, as I said, different facts are there, different fact situations, but these are the different ratios we could cull out for when bail is denied and when bail is granted. They are usually a rule of thumb kind of things. Now, I'm sorry, just
Charanaji will be joining us shortly. Please bear with us. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Something just this thing on my screen. So, as I said, the validity of certain arrest provisions of Section 69 and 132 have been challenged in the past. There is the judgment of the Delhi High Court in Dhruv Kishan Maggu, where they have taken a prima facie view that Section 69 and 132 are not ultra vires 246A. That's the view that has been taken. I think Article 32 petition was also filed in, I think, the case of Dinesh Dwivedi in the Supreme Court, which then remanded the matter back or asked them to go and move appropriate, writ petitions in the High Court. So with respect to the issue of legislative competence now of Section 69 and of Section 132, it's now pending before different courts in Bombay High Court, in Punjab, Haryana, and in Delhi. So this is really where it will be interesting to see what the courts hold with respect to arrest provisions, etc. And finally, in light of all of this happening, we have seen that, I think all of us have seen that, especially when it comes to GST, the government has been, and the GST Council has been more than responsive. They have their eyes open, ears, to the ground. They really know what's going on all the time. So then some interesting things. So they have enhanced some of the compliances. So for registration, now you need to have an Aadhaar-based registration if you want to take registration. There is a biometric information and verification that is taking place. Original documents such as rent agreements, etc. This is really to try and curb, fake and fictitious firms from getting registered. We are also seeing that, the restriction of ITC under Rule 36(4) is going on getting restricted further and further whenever your suppliers are not filing returns. E-invoicing provisions were made mandatory from January 2020, also with this effort of streamlining the invoices. Even beneficiaries of certain transactions can face penalty under 122(1)(a). And also refund provisions relating to refund at the time of exports, etc. Those have also been amended under Section 89(4)(c). The restriction without certain documentation, etc., is now required. And there is a restriction on the turnover. So it is restricted to 1.5 times the value of like goods supplied domestically. So all kinds of restrictions are now brought in place because of that. So I would like to conclude here, and I'd like to hand over, to Sanjay ji and Astha and the panelists right now. Thank you.
Thank you for such a detailed deliberation, Charanya ji. It was a very, very knowledgeable session. And it was great the way you highlighted the various indicators that, taxpayers do not keep in mind while seeking registration. And good that you've given us precautionary steps that taxpayers should take while analyzing different vendors. And I think it's not only the taxpayers, but we as GST consultants, advisors, statutory internal auditors, we should also, instruct on, recommend these suggestions to the clients that they can also take these things in mind while, maintaining the vendor master. And also very detailed deliberation on the arrest, bail provisions. I honestly, it really opened up my mind. And we have, ways to scare our clients also. Listen, these provisions are also in place to keep these in mind. So without any further ado, I would like to invite Rohit Vaswani to share his precious views on this topic.
Thank you, Astha. And I think the excellent presentation was made by Charanya ji, and all the facets of the issue has been deliberated here. Even the judgments and the contradictory judgments and the same precedents which has been used in favor of the SSE and against the SSE also, that has been highlighted. And I think the topic has been touched by every corner. Few facts I would like to mention here, and some of the question answer is also coming. And in one of the question, some concern has been raised, and Charanya would certainly like to answer those issues. But the thing is that how the GST system is working. GST law totally is the technology-based law. And in this scenario, when the excise is subsumed, service tax is subsumed, and you are allowing the credits to travel across the country, not limited to a state, then certainly you need a robust system, and that is the demand of the day. Now the question comes whether the failure of the system is leading to the fake invoices issue, or the all fraudulent invoice makers were waiting that the GST will come and we will start doing this activity, because suddenly you find the so much arrest, even though the power to arrest was taken in service tax also later on and in excise also. But if you compare the previous regime of excise and service tax, and even in income tax, there is no power to arrest. You can easily differentiate the working of the GST department with the earlier indirect tax department, and we need to find out the causes of these issues. If you are not having a system, simple system, whenever there is an invoice being uploaded on a portal and that invoice is linked to your payment of tax, how can you make the reconciliation, and how can you make the person responsible that you are taking a fake credit?
Yes.
Or this term, the fake invoice itself is in question. You know, everything you say it's a fake invoice. How can every invoice be a fake invoice? You know, there may be broadly two categories. One invoice is maybe that even if there is no supply, actually the supply of goods or services, but there is no direct loss to the revenue. The taxes are duly paid. The output tax is paid in due course as per the provisions of the law. And that also you treat it as a fake invoice. And in some of the recent cases also of the good companies, and the directors are facing the heat of the arrest. One side, we are talking about the decriminalization of the tax provisions, and the committees are being formed. And in companies law, the report has already been submitted. In GST also you are talking about. On the another side, you are not able to distinguish between the fake invoices issues. And another side is that if there is a fake invoice, there has the breakage of chain. Then only the revenue leakage, direct leakage can happen. And that responsibility goes directly to the government to place the technology to the system. And I am sure with my little bit of experience in the practice in the indirect taxes, that it is not a, something rocket science that you will you cannot do it. If you are not able to link your invoice with the tax payment and link your ITC with your purchases, then I don't think the business class or the community should be held responsible for this. And so far as the precedents which has been discussed are very enlightening, but I am sorry to say, it is very much speculation even today before the courts, that how the court will adjudicate the matter in a particular case. Even in case of bail, you will find the whole judgment is talking about is the giving of the bail, and in the last sentence, and the line is written that I am in favor of granting of the bail as there is no need. And you will find the whole judgment which is talking that the bail should not be, it is only in exceptional cases, due care. And basically arrest is there when you want to prevent the recurrence of the crime. That is the main purpose. You cannot say that the GST authorities can adjudicate the matter. Are the GST authorities authorized to adjudicate the criminal matters? No, not at all. They are making the arrest. Either the evidences are tempered or the crimes are being recurred, and you are you doing this arrest with general civil laws or general show cause notice type things are happening. I think the time has come. We need to work upon it. This also, courts also need to give the clear guidelines, and I think Honorable Supreme Court should enter into this domain and give the clear guideline. Although we had a Punjab and Haryana Maggu case where we have some light on the arrest provisions, but still, I see that there is lot much confusion so far as the bail matters are concerned.
It's a flip of a coin, sir. Honestly, you don't know that
don't.
person. Yeah, absolutely, it's a flip of a coin. You're absolutely right, sir.
Yeah, that is not a healthy situation. When the GST was implemented, it was with a very positive note. And when we are, seeing the GST with the arrest and bail provision, it is something which we were not anticipating at all. With this, thank you for giving me this opportunity, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Rohit ji. Puneet ji, would you like to express your views on this topic?
I think this is one of the most interesting topic, which only has problems, and which do not have solutions with anyone. So before I begin, I would first of all thank Sharanya, with whom I have worked for a long time, and it has been really nice memories. They're coming back again. We are sharing the dais. So thank you, Sharanya, for accepting our invitation. And your presentation was really very nice, very elaborate. You have touched upon all the issues. But the issue is such that the solutions are just not there. So on this issue, I would only like to touch upon one policy matter. I think the courts really would find it extremely difficult to navigate with such kind of a policy which is so inherently self-contradictory. Why do I call it inherently self-contradictory? Kindly see the entire objective which is captured in the discussions that paved the way for introduction of GST. Prior to the introduction of Constitutional Amendment Bill 122nd, and prior to the introduction of the GST bills, the CGST, IGST, etc., the single most important reason which was highlighted for introducing GST was a seamless input tax credit. If at all the present scheme of input tax credit as it exists in the statute book, by no stretch of imagination one can say it is seamless. It is anything but seamless. So on the top of it, you have a policy to link it to the taxes which are actually paid by the suppliers. So the regime requires two things. Of course, the procedural compliances of having an invoice, showing it in the returns, so and so forth by the buyer. But the regime additionally requires two things. And kindly see that how self-contradictory they are, or rather how much they are asking from a businessman. And we have to all remember that after all, GST is a taxing law. It's not a criminal law. It's not a law which is paving way for some kind of a societal change. It's paving way for some kind of a commercial or a business or a fiscal change. And the ground reality, the fact of the matter is that in India, every month, if I remember correctly, in 2017, the figure given by the GSTN CEO at that time was 3 billion invoices. And if my maths is correct, it turns out to 300 crore of invoices, 300 crores. And India is not a place where only Tatas or Birlas or Reliances are there. India is a place where even roadside dhabawalas are making sales and making good amount of sales. And India lives in hundreds and thousands of its villages and thousands of towns across the country. Now, keeping all this in conspectus, now see what are the two conditions. The two additional conditions are that not only it must be reflected by the supplier in his return, which correspondingly has to reflect in your return, and which functionality itself was introduced many number of years later. There is an additional requirement that the supplier should have actually paid the tax. Now, this is something which no buyer, in fact, even the government cannot guarantee that the supplier pays the tax. If the suppliers would have been able to pay the tax in all cases, what was the need for IBC? What was the need for corporate insolvency resolution processes? And is this the way commercial worlds are to go on? And if the buyer who is to make purchases every day, every minute, many buyers have hundreds of invoices every day. If he is required invoice-wise to determine that whether the supplier has paid the tax, is it something we can really put on to the courts and say, please see, this is what the government is doing? They will say, you please decide when the elections are coming. This you make it as an electoral issue. What can we do? This is a policy issue. And we all know that in tax laws, there is wide latitude available to the governments while framing the laws. So of course, the constitutional part definitely do play a role in it, that there is a supplier and there is a buyer, and the buyer claims himself to be a bona fide buyer. In that case, is there a rational connection between the supplier's non-payment and denial of credit to the buyer? If you really ask me, it's a question, and you would find that the most senior constitutional experts would have divided views. Many of them may ultimately say that governments have wide latitude while selecting the fiscal policies. So now, but the question therefore remains is that if the basic purpose of granting the credit, in fact, for introduction of GST was to have that seamless chain, then can you have such like implications on the buyer? And today's topic focuses more not on the civil aspect of it. On the top of it, you say that, look, he has not paid the tax. Today, I can't find him, or he has gone bankrupt, or there are some suspected dealings when we went to him. He has purchased from someone who has been arrested in an ED case. So your goose is cooked on that basis. You are arrested on that basis. And please remember, in GST, there is neither an FIR nor a complaint. It is an internal case file which is moved, and on that basis, the reasons to believe are to be recorded. So you all know that how reasons can be recorded. It's basically a play with the English words. And after all, the courts have said that we will not analyze the sufficiency of the material. We will only analyze as to whether there is a material. So that kind, as Charanya has already explained, the judicial review power is extremely limited. And please know that you do not have the documents to argue also. So it is like a sealed cover will be presented to the court and you will not even know what will come out of it. What will you argue? So, and I think it's the most apt way of putting it is that it is basically a toss of the coin whether you would be behind bars or you would be open in the air. So I think I would only say this. Beauty of tax laws till now has been that they are interpreted on the basis of the language used. It is often said that there is no equity in a tax. Now, by adding criminal jurisprudence so deeply into tax laws, what is happening is we are making the tax laws more and more vulnerable to the varying and various interpretation being made by different courts, because then criminal law jurisprudence, you all know, it is open to discretion, and it is open to very, very wide discretion. And that's why, as Rohit ji has already pointed out, you get an entire jurisprudence talking about the bail, but concluding into a jail. So this is something which is really bothering the business community. And how do people navigate through it? It is impossible. It is a situation, I would say, where a problem has been, it's like a chakravyuh, where you can simply enter, and rather you do not have a choice whether to enter or not. You have to enter into it, but there is no way out. It is just a chance whether you get out of it or not. I think this is not, surely, definitely not the way in which the tax laws, and that too the most integral tax of the entire business, which we call as GST, that should not be the way in which it should have been, I would say, implemented. It really needs immediate attention. It really needs a lot of introspection, lot of discussion. And look, we have good precedents available in form of VAT laws, in form of excise and service tax laws. They were very successful, and it was never, credit was not a game of chance. It was never like this ever before, the way it has now turned out to be. That is all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Puneetji. You have put up the harsh reality of ITC awareness in a very well manner. So thank you for your views. We have a
yeah.
couple of
Sorry, Asta, I just
Yeah.
wanted to add to what
Sure.
Puneet sir said, which is that the jurisprudence, two very interesting factors, and then we can take questions. Two very interesting things that we should take away from what he said. First is the jurisprudence under excise law and the customs and the service tax law and the VAT laws, right? There were very few issues that had not got settled, because these are laws that have been in India for more than 50 years, right? Constitutional aspect got settled. You never saw so much discretion available for arrest, right? This, unfortunately, I feel, Puneet sir, what has happened is GST law was introduced in the post-ED era, the post when, they are just, shooting off the hip. NIA, CBI, ED, these are bodies which have extreme amount of discretion available, which is encouraged, right? That may be for certain other reasons. Okay, I'm not going into the legality, the correctness of those things at all. But the inspiration, earlier DRI was the only investigative body we all used to be scared of, because it was really, they were dealing with smugglers and they were dealing with genuine payers, so they would treat them the same. Now GST authorities, I feel, and Puneet sir, correct me if my understanding is wrong, with this post ED, post CBI, NIA environment, right? They are very trigger happy. They are very, very trigger happy, and somewhere it is getting blessed. The system is allowing this to happen more and more, right? The curb that should be there should be a very strong hold from the courts. And the reason, again, what Puneet sir said is, earlier, why were they saying there is no equity in tax? Because at most you have to pay money, right? Now, it cannot be that I will not give you equity in tax in the interpretation, and I will also give you the harshest punishments available. So when we talk about criminal law jurisprudence, it is preponderance of possibility, beyond reasonable doubt, all of that is there, right? Which you will not do for a tax law. You're not going to go, and when I think somebody had even asked one of the questions, that I feel that the tax evaded is not over 5 crores, right? That should be proven beyond reasonable doubt before I get arrested. But that's not happening. There they are saying, no, we'll see, it is economic offense. I mean, there are murders happening where you are going to let them off because you don't have enough evidence. And you feel that economic offense is greater, especially when you are not given the benefit of that interpretation, right? That is really the catch-22 situation. And I really appreciate, Puneet sir. I completely agree with you. Sorry, Asta, I also got carried away.
Please don't be sorry.
We're all very passionate about this.
I mean, the severity of the crimes that are happening in the country, nobody is attending to those. But here and there, wherein there can be genuine cases, you're just not giving any benefit of doubt and, arresting them at whims and fancies.
No, and I just want to say, when I was working with Mr. Venugopal, I was a government lawyer. Okay, I was a panel lawyer. Sir was not taking tax matters, so I wasn't getting conflicted. But I did matters for NIA, for CBI. I've seen those matters, right? And there are some horrendous crimes happening.
Right.
Honestly speaking, I unfortunately I was dealing with the Bihar shelter home case. And, you couldn't read what was written on the paper, right? Has justice been given to those people, those children who went missing, whose bodies were found buried? No. But apparently fake ITC trading, instead of just catching those people, the department has to find a system. The markers that I mentioned initially, it is their responsibility to find it and curb it. It is not my responsibility as a customer to find who all are giving me fake invoices, and then I'm also in the loop, right? So there is a complete lack of interest. I think they've just, they're not holding on the reins tightly. That's what I feel.
Correct. I think we have a couple of questions in the Q&A box, so I'll just recite them and we can respond to them accordingly. So first question we have is from CA Akhilesh Kumar Garg. There are so many cases of fake invoices and evasion of taxes in all part of country, which causes a great deal of loss to the government. Is it not the right time to look into or review the whole scheme of law, as the present scheme is providing very easy window to the wrongdoers and causing very hard times to genuine taxpayers, as officers are misusing the provisions? Please comment.
I'll comment, and I would request Rohit ji and Puneet sir also to add. I think that unfortunately our GST law is going to look very soon like the Income Tax Act. We'll not know why an amendment came. It's just going to be riddled with amendments. It already is. If you miss 3 months for some reason, either you've got COVID and you were hospitalized for 3 months, or you've had a baby and you were on maternity leave for 3 months, you'll come back to a different law. You will see amendments, you'll see circulars, and you don't know why that was there. So that's what is happening right now. But I don't know. I don't know if the right thing is to review the whole thing. Because that we already know in the cooperative federalism how much effort it took them to bring this about. So I think ground reality, I don't think people are going to agree to a reversion to the old scheme. Though, I feel the old scheme was actually working very well after seeing this. So I don't know. I mean, that's my comment. I don't know. Rohit ji and Puneet ji can add.
I talked about the same also, that what was the, we have the expectations from the implementation of the GST, and it was on a very positive note that now we are going to open the horizon more bigger, and from state level credits, we are moving towards the pan-India country level credits. And what I see that if you see the policy matters also, if you see the section also, it is not the whole law. It is only one line which makes a difference. Only single line in change in the provisions make a lot of difference. And what I foresee that the technology is the answer for the proper implementation of the GST. And it was basically the technologically oriented law. If you are able to make a system like, in TDS, if I upload a return, I need to match the TDS from the challans right away there only. And if there is no matching of the challan, I cannot upload the TDS return at all. I am keeping aside the issue that I should be given right to upload the return even without payment of tax. That is a separate issue altogether. I am not talking about even from the starting of the July 7, 2017. If you could have matched your taxes with the output tax liability, and the invoices, once it is reflected, becomes the invoices on which tax has been duly discharged. Now you do not know even the invoices which are appearing in 2B or 2A, whether the tax on that has been paid or not. And you are having a clear-cut provision in the provisions of the law in section 16(2) that the taxes must have been paid if you want to avail the credit on that invoices, and now being amended that not only paid, it must have been uploaded by the supplier, and it must be reflected to you also. If there is some glitches in the portal and the supplier uploads the invoice and it is not reflected to the recipient, the credit will not be allowed as per the law. Even though I am taking, because it is a new law. I am not going in the past, but naturally the law needs times to be developed. And we have seen the 6th Amendment in the Constitution, 1956. Then we have the 46th Amendment in the Constitution. And we have seen how the nexus theory was disturbing the whole indirect tax system in our country. Now in GST also, if you can only give a robust technology and system, I think that it will start running properly, and then we will decide that how much liberty we want from the law, or how much leverage we want from the existing provisions. In fact, it is not being implemented in a manner which we were thinking of the implementation. So it has stuck from the implementation itself. So that is the main concern, and it can be done within the framework which is available right now. So this is, in short, I would like to comment.
I want to say two things only.
Yeah, please.
We have to go back to the old school system where you adjudicate first and punish thereafter.
Yeah.
And you need to bring institutional accountability. It cannot be let loose on the people of the country. We need to change the mindset. I think that is where we need to work a lot.
Great point. Next question. What happens to the arrest provisions where there's dispute around the demand amount? I think Charna ji had partially responded to this query. Is there any other view on the same?
Nothing from my side. I think I've already, I mean, it's an open-ended thing.
Yeah, Rohit Puneet ji.
It is open-ended. It is
Okay.
open-ended. You need to show prima facie. That's the best you can do.
Right.
And there is discretion and discretion with the court.
Next query we have from CA Tanmay Gupta. It's regarding e-invoicing. It says that when the invoices are pushed on IR end, but at month end, when the taxpayer is about to file the GSTR1, it shows that the GST has been cancelled by department. It's suyo moto. So for compliance purposes, should the taxpayer proceed ahead to file the same invoices in B2C instead of B2B? What are the various precautions that such taxpayers should take in such a scenario?
Rohit ji and Puneet sir should answer this. I mean, I feel bad for the person who has to face this situation.
Yeah.
But I mean, if the GSTR number is cancelled of your supplier in the middle of the month, right? So again, I think the law doesn't really provide for such a situation. No, it assumes that whoever has got an registration number is going to be validly registered, etc. Yeah, but precaution, I don't know. I think precaution, you just have to intimate, I think, immediately and things like that.
Rohit Puneet ji.
रोहित जी आप देंगे जवाब?
नहीं, आप ऐड करिए पुनीत जी।
नहीं, मेरे को ये बताइए आस्था, इसमें किसका रजिस्ट्रेशन कैंसिल हुआ है, सप्लायर का या बायर
का हुआ है? आई थिंक
सप्लायर का, जो बेसिकली जिसने इनवॉइसेस पंच किए ना आईआरएन में, उसको अपनी GSTR1 फाइल करनी थी। जब वो फाइल करने लगा उस टाइम उसको पता चला था कैंसिल हो गया रजिस्ट्रेशन। तो अब वो कह रहा है कि
नोटिस तो आया होगा कैंसिलेशन से पहले।
हाँ, आया होगा, मे बी से मिस हो गया होगा। डू वी हैव Tanmay on board?
You should ask Tanmay, please go to Puneet sir's for opinion.
Admin, can you enable Tanmay to, speak this?
No, I'm joking. I'm saying that he should be going for a formal opinion in this case.
Fine.
Facts are required to be
it's very,
and it is a technological flow. Even in case of registration also, when your registration is cancelled, you are allowed to upload the invoices till date of cancellation, and you are allowed to file your return, you are allowed to pay your taxes till date of cancellation. So that thing should happen with the e-invoice portal also. If it is not happening, it's a technical issue. I think we need not to dwell upon much on this right now.
Fine.
You can go to High Court, I can say that much.
Yes.
That's it.
and let me know also, Charanya, if you are saying you go to High Court, and the issue which was just, we didn't comment on the computation of the 5 crore amount. Do you think the judges sitting on the dais at that time have 2 minutes or 5 minutes? They are capable of quantifying the amount of 5 crore, whether it involves 5 crore or not. So this is, something.
No, it is not their capability. You are asking a wrong question. It's your capability whether you can show it within 2 minutes or not.
True. Okay, moving on ahead, we have a query from CAK Hanmandaluji. How is the arrest of a person concerned will help the GST department in collecting information and further investigation?
So, okay, I think he has another question. Is that the same
Yeah.
question? Or
No,
was-
it's next question
Okay,
is
different.
regarding why not allow the purchaser to pay GST on goods purchased and inform seller, which will be reflected in the invoice.
Okay, okay. So I think the reason why, arrest happens during investigation is typically to collect more information, to find out other people in the racket. Okay. And if this person is likely to tamper with evidence, threaten other material witnesses, that is really when arrest takes place. Sometimes people don't, as I said, they don't cooperate with summons. So if you don't arrest them, there is, they may not cooperate, they may not come and appear for summons. That's really why people are arrested or should be arrested.
Practically,
Technically.
only one more thing. Interestingly, the GST department do not have their post-arrest investigation system. So there is nothing like police remand in GST.
Yeah.
So it goes to the judicial remand. And to my experience, I have never seen them going to the judicial and taking any evidence after they have arrested. They arrest to coerce. It's very, very clear. And the justifications which are given is that it is a prima facie case. They have clearly done something which they should not have done. They say that the submission is, or the argument of the department is, that the person arrested has done something which is in grave violation of the law, and a lot of financial loss has been caused to the exchequer. This is the reason generally given. Though yes, logically what Sharanya ji was saying, that was the correct point, that they should have arrested for those reasons.
Yes. Theory. Theory,
yeah, that's right.
Okay. Next question we have is, can I request the investigating officer for the copy of statement provided by me during the summon proceedings? And once the officer is satisfied, will I get any document substantiating the closure of summon proceedings?
Wow. If you have to talk about summons and statements, I think we will take hours. But just very pointed answers to this. Can you request the investigating officer for a copy? Yes, you can request. The question should be, will he give me? The answer is no, he will not give you. Okay. You are not going to get it. Right? You are supposed to get a copy of your statements as a relied upon document along with the show cause. Show cause you will get, if you are lucky, in 6 months or 1 year, or you will at least will get some show cause. So that is really what. Once the officer is satisfied, will I get any document substantiating closure of summon proceedings? No. I have nothing else to say. You will never know till the show cause is issued whether the investigation is concluded against you or not. It is a knife hanging on top of your head till you get SCN. Puneet sir?
Rohit ji?
No, that is perfectly okay. But if the arrest has been made on the basis of the statement which has been recorded, then they have to provide the copy of that statement because it becomes the relevant, relied upon documents at that time. And if there is no arrest and the document is only just a statement has been recorded, then I think you may request and they will not provide.
Fine. Now I would like to request Sanjay ji to give the vote of thanks for today's session.
So wonderful, wonderful, and wonderful. So first of all, thank you, Sharanya ji. Thank you very much. आपने नंबर 1 तो जो टाइमलाइंस थे बहुत ही स्ट्रिक्टली फॉलो किए, और विद इन टाइम आपने इतना बड़ा, इतना ह्यूज टॉपिक जिसमें अरेस्ट और बेल को भी कवर कर लिया विद कोटिंग जजमेंट्स एंड एवरीथिंग, इतना डिटेल्ड टॉपिक को विद इन टाइम कवर किया. थैंक यू वेरी मच. And it was your first session, first webinar with the VVSS. So we will request, so please keep coming and keep delivering your sessions. So thank you very much. And thanks to our always favorable and all-time high CA Rohit Vaswani ji and Puneet Agrawal ji. बहुत ही अच्छे तरीके से आपने अपने बहुत ही 10 मिनट 5 मिनट के टाइम के अंदर पूरे सेशन को कंक्लूड किया और अपनी बात रखी. तो थैंक यू वेरी मच. एंड थैंक यू आस्था, आपने पूरे सेशन को मॉडरेट करने की जो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ली और बहुत अच्छे तरीके से पूरा सेशन स्टार्टिंग बहुत अच्छी करी। स्टार्टिंग में जो कंक्लूजन था पूरे सेशन का कि क्या टॉपिक है, वहां से जो स्टार्ट किया, बहुत अच्छे तरीके से पूरा सेशन रहा। और थैंक यू संदीप शर्मा जी। संदीप शर्मा जी इज आवर program secretary programs of the VVSS. He is also with us. So thank you Sandeep ji. And finally thanks to the all our learned members जो हमारे साथ रहे पूरे टाइम, और उन्होंने काफी क्वेश्चंस भी पूछे जिससे जो भी एक कुछ अनक्लैरिटी थी माइंड में वो भी क्लियर हुई। सो थैंक यू एवरीवन, थैंक यू वेरी मच, थैंक यू।
Thank you. Thank you once again. Thank you so much. It was a privilege and honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
For inviting me.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.